or PSYOPs are to a degree, or they're just not as they appear. So like a lot of the occult Laurel Canyon stuff, it actually happened. And people were really into the Laurel Canyon scene and the hippie movement, but it was not for peace and love. It was actually kind of the exact opposite. So I think it's interesting how people will like die on the hill. Oh, I love Jim Morrison or whatever. And if you really find out who his family was and what they were up to, you wouldn't actually agree with anything that they stood for. So I think that's kind of an interesting place to start. And are you all familiar with David McGowan at all?
Dave, I know that name. Who's David McGowan?
So he actually wrote the book Strange Scenes from the Canyon about Laurel Canyon.
Yeah.
And I've kind of expanded on it with my own research, but he got one of those real fast-acting CIA type of cancers. And he died before a lot of discoveries were made with the Laurel Canyon. So I thought it was great to read the book, but knowing what I know now, it just makes everything make a little bit more sense, if that makes sense. But he talks about like August 1964 was the Tonkin Gulf incident, which basically led to the Vietnam War. And the thing about the Vietnam War is what a lot of people talk about in the conspiracy theory community is you need a certain level of bodies for a quote unquote, like a sacrificial type of death to power something up. So in my mind, when I hear about the Tonkin Gulf incident, which is like a totally, like it never really even happened. It wasn't even a false flag. It never happened. It was like a bullshit story that they came up with just so they could start a war, pretty much. And like millions of Southeast Asian people and like 50,000 American kids, like fresh out of high school, died horrific, gruesome deaths because of this war. And what was happening at the same time in the nation is like this hippie movement is rising out of nowhere. So was this kind of like this sacrificial right to bring in this new era of music and culture? I think so, but that's just my opinion.
That's really interesting. That's a super deep. Now that is as a deep occult conspiracy as you will get. Like that, there was a sacrifice. It's almost like they're in 5 steps ahead of everything. They create this to create this to create this to create that, right? They create so they fake a Gulf Tonkin attack in order to go into Vietnam. And to go into Vietnam, that helps 2 things: the military-industrial complex, but really what nobody talks about is that the Golden Triangle of poppy fields, which is the real reason we went into Vietnam. Where have we heard that before? Afghanistan. That's exactly why we went to Afghanistan. That's exactly why we went to Vietnam. And they made it about communism, right? Because, you know, and just like how these people attacked us on 9/11, even though it was all the hijackers were Saudi, even if that's stories. I don't believe I'm almost all out on the 19 hijackers, by the way. I'm almost all out on that.
So all the way drone?
Drones at the least for me. Drones at the least.
What, CGI?
Well, I mean, we know people who saw it, right? Don't we?
No, we know people who saw it. So I'm like drones. Yeah. Drones that look like planes. That's what I'm thinking.
Certainly possible.
So, but then you're adding the level that now they use the Vietnam War to usher in this new kind of, let's call it what it is, Luciferianism.
It really was, Sam, because you're taking the 1950s, and I'm a huge fan of the 50s, but you're taking stuff like Buddy Holly, who also died horrifically in a plane crash, but you're taking people like Buddy Holly and Richie Valens and like all the music from the 1950s that was more like
Wholesome.
loving and wholesome. Yeah. And even when you went to like a school dance or something in the 50s, you had to maintain a certain distance from them. And you move into the 60s and out of nowhere, you're getting like, if you can't be with the one you want, be with the one you're with. Everybody take birth control and fuck your brains out, because
Yes.
that's essentially what the 60s ushered in. And the so-called hippies that were leading the movement, all of their fathers were high-level military.
Yes.
And like, so we're talking about the Tonkin golf incident. Well, that was led by Jim Morrison's father.
Yeah, and you know it's so interesting because we're about to get into a deep dive with Ferguson from White Lotus of Light, and he's coming on right after you, and he's very much into that. There's a difference between Luciferians and Malachians, and this kind of gets into like a little bit of both, in that the death of so many people in Vietnam is very Malachian. The death and the destruction, the spraying of chemicals, the Agent Orange, all that stuff is very at the spectrum of light to evil to darkness, right? This is the darkest, right? And then you get kind of
It's a death cult,
it's
kind
a
of.
death cult, and then you got kind of more in, which is the free will side of it, right? Which is the hippie movement. So it's like this is kind of like two like kind of them working together in a weird way, right? And then
Well, it is weird too, because so all these musicians and singers and songwriters are flocking to the Laurel Canyon, like Crosby, Stills and Nash and the Mamas and the Papas, which I love all of them, and Frank Zappa, the Byrds, they're all flocking to this Laurel Canyon area, right? And they're railing against the government and like, just let us be free and peace and love. But they never once ever mentioned that all of their fathers were high-level military, that they grew up on military,
You're so right.
like industrial complex. I mean, like Frank Zappa's dad, I have in my notes here so I wouldn't forget. He was the head of warfare and MK Ultra operations at the Edgewood Arsenal facility. So what was he really railing against, but never mentioned one time who his father was?
It's so crazy, right? It's so crazy. Now, why do you think they use military brats?
I think they start them young, kind of like, this is who you're going to be. This is our family. Because, I mean, even like Frank Zappa, he grows up and he marries this lady named Adelaide Sloatman, who changed her name to Gail Zappa. But her father and all of the fathers before that were military captains. So it's not like they even kind of just met and fell in love and decided to change the world with peace and love and music. No, their families probably knew each other, just like John Phillips and Jackson Brown and all of those other hippies, quote unquote. They married military people, and they come from military backgrounds.
Guys, real quick, I want to tell you about
At any point, they're getting fame and money, and their names will be remembered forever. Like, who wouldn't want that? And they kind of glamorize this role for them. Like, your dad's going to say, hey, Jim, we're going to give you boatloads of cash and endless pussy for the rest of your life, and no one will ever forget you, and you'll live down through the sands of time, and all you have to do is jack off on stage every once in a while. Like, why would you turn that down? Like, for me, if that's how I grew up, and I'm not saying I'm a Luciferian or anything, I'd be like, fuck yes, anything I can do so I don't have to punch a fucking clock every day.
You know what? A great example of what you're talking about, and that they know what they're perpetrating, is Ashley Simpson, right? Or Milli Vanilli, where like they presented themselves as these amazing singers, fully knowing that they were lip syncing everything they were doing, right? When Ashley Simpson.
Oh, dude, that ended her career. It ended
her career.
So sad. It was like, she was a mocking stock. She was memes before memes were a thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was done before. I mean, and then didn't she go somewhere in Oklahoma and try to sing the national anthem, and they booed her like the entire stadium? And then she's like, "Wrap it up, wrap it up." But and then Milli Vanilli. I mean, it's so hilarious because somebody memed this really earlier. Was like, how many of these TikTok people are just lip syncing songs and they're becoming famous off it, and like everyone's like, we owe Milli Vanilli an apology, but they completely, they presented themselves as legitimate stars.
Like the one that I know, if it is true that they know that they're PSYOPs, is Dr. Dre. Because Dr. Dre, there's a picture of him. He went to like a private school.
Yeah.
And all this. Why would you pick a private school? And then Eazy-E calls him out. He's like, hey, you're a private school. You're not part of the crew type of thing. And then he puts a picture of fucking Dr. Dre and this like looking kind of feminine. And it's that thing like, why would you pick someone in a private school?
100%. That's exactly, dude, NWA, as great as they are, and they are great. When you hear some NWA, man, it's just like, let's fucking go to war, bro. Yeah. And it is 100% CIA, FBI propaganda. 100%.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. But I mean, like, they still to some degree practice what their parents kind of raised them with. Because even after John Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas, he marries like this military girl. I don't know. I think somehow, oh yeah, that's right, Susie Adams. So her great-great-grandpa was President John Adams. And so he marries like this very aristocratic young lady. And John Phillips actually engages in a 10-year incestuous relationship with their oldest daughter, Mackenzie. So you get I don't even know what to call it. I guess Luciferian, incestuous, just disgusting. And like the daughter, Mackenzie, she said, like John Phillips would let guys just come into the house and take turns on her, and Mick Jagger and like whoever was interested. So that's his own flesh and blood. If you are willing to sell out your own flesh and blood, you are capable of anything.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it's just, it's insane how dark these people get. It's insane to me.
Mackenzie Phillips is, everything she says is horrifying. I mean,
yeah.
Some of the worst reading is reading Mackenzie Phillips quotes about her time with Papa John.
And didn't she go on to do like a television show?
She
was in a movie. She was in a movie called American Graffiti, which was one of my favorite movies as a kid. But she wasn't like a vision of beauty or anything. She kind of had like a girl next door type of vibe. But I mean, God bless her for being able to come forward and share everything that she has about what happened to her.
Oh yeah, Mackenzie Phillips was also on a famous television show. Like what was the show called? Hold on. American Graffiti. She was also on something. Yeah, I remember when her story started coming out.
One day
she was on Oprah.
One Day at a Time. There we go. I knew she was on a famous show. Yeah, and like her stories when she came out, you're like, and it's so interesting because she came out, and I remember thinking like, man, this short story should be way bigger, and nobody's talking about it.
No, nobody. Yeah.
And it's like this is the beginning of the cover up of Hollywood, of protecting this pedalwood shit that's going on. And I mean, this is the earliest stages of it.
I don't know if we're going to get into it, but do you think that Fort Doc thing that Mel Gibson's talking about, you think it's going to go into these years?
Well, I haven't seen Mel Gibson actually say he's doing it. I've seen people say he's doing it.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see. I mean, I hope he does. But the question gets like, okay, makes his doc. Where's he going to put it? Like, where are they going to release it?
I mean, he said that. I mean, YouTube video said that when they released all that, him saying those anti-Semitic stuff, that's when he was going to first release it, and that's when they calmed him down. And that now that the internet's out, he has the right to, like, you know, speak his mind and stuff. But I don't know.
I mean, I hope so, dude. He's been right about a lot of shit.
I think he could sell it direct to consumer. I mean, people would pay for that.
There's a bunch of places who do it, but again, you know, it's like we were talking about whether like Joe Rogan's gonna re-up with Spotify or not. Like, I hope he does. But everyone's like, he should just go off on his own. And I'm like, I don't know, man, because now they got you at point of entry. Like, you need a giant tech person to fight for you.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, good luck.
Also, you're the one getting sued then, you know, instead of the company. Yeah.
But it's like, look at Alex Jones. As big as Alex Jones is, like,
InfoWars is a whole. We've been to his studio. It's a lot of work.
yeah, but
got, like,
it's
8 people
also
running.
like he's nowhere but InfoWars.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, is that what Joe wants? I don't think Joe would want that. I think Joe enjoys being in the mainstream. So it's like, if he doesn't do Spotify, which I think Spotify will do it, but if they don't, I mean, where's he going to go? Apple?
Well, you saw that YouTube's not doing political strikes no more, at least for now,
Really?
All political spread?
or something like that. Yeah, they're not doing some strikes. They
Well,
went,
she just said she got dinged on some shit.
no, I think like last week or something. They cooled down on some strikes.
No, they cooled down on that you said if you said the election was rigged.
Yeah, something political where they said they were gonna just let it slide now.
Which is really interesting because you're like, why are they doing that?
And for now, that's what I'm saying. For now, because when the election comes back up, I'm sure they're gonna stop.
I think they're going to throw Joe Biden under the bus, and that's just releasing the Krakens.
You don't think he's going to run?
I think they're going to try their hardest to get.
I don't think I have
both
anybody
Trump
else.
and Biden out. They don't even want either of them. That their goal is not to have either of them
they're
run.
foolish if they abandon the advantage of a sitting president campaigning. I mean, it's so hard to beat an incumbent
He's so
president.
old though.
Yeah, I mean, this is if
Yeah,
there's ever,
we all
they don't
want
have anybody
4 more years of the creepy guy from Poltergeist 2. Like,
So
He does look like him. You're so right. Wow.
yeah.
That guy
Yeah,
used to
for
scare the shit
sure.
out of me, dude. That guy scared
Was
the
that
hell out
the
of me.
Mary Ann come to the light?
No,
Marianne?
yeah, but this is the second one where that old man. Remember him like walking up the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Hi, young lady.
Yeah,
Can I come in?
yeah.
Oh, that gives me the chills.
She is, yeah. So you have all these people, and like I really go back to like again. Let's get to Vietnam. We have all this social strife going on, and just like today, like it's so obvious today. It's so obvious today, but like then it wasn't. They're all controlled, all of them. They're either a CIA asset or an FBI asset. And it's so crazy because they're like the founders of movements.
yeah, and on that point, actually talking about a founder of a movement in modern day times, Frank Zappa had this log cabin of sorts, which was kind of like a little mansion tucked away in the hills. And he actually had like Charlie Manson living with him. And there's rumors that there's all these like tunnels and caves that were dug in underneath the log cabin. And Lady Gaga actually owned it for a while. And I think Jared Leto owns it now.
Oh, the one at the top, the big.
Yeah, dude. I know somebody who worked for him.
Yeah.
up there. And
Yeah.
it's a weird place, dude. That guy's into some.
Everything's weird about that guy.
Yeah, he's strange, man.
When you see him live in concert, he wants you to believe he's Jesus. He looks like gay
yes.
Jesus.
I mean, his little sleepaway camp where he has all those people come out and he dresses like the Messiah. It's bizarre.
He's bizarre, dude.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And think about him owning that. Like, what was the significance to him to want to own something like that? And he keeps popping the fuck up on my YouTube every single time. Like, I could just type in something really random, and there's Jared Leto, and it's nothing to do with Morbius. It's just him looking like a Nephilim or something with angel wings, and it's just really creepy and cryptic. And I think there is a reason for sure why he wants to live in the log cabin.
It's interesting, man, because you go through all these people who led all these movements, and they're all CIA, FBI assets, but they're still revered. That's the weirdest thing to me, is that they're all still revered. Like,
it's the music. I mean, it's the music.
But it's also like, look at Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. They have been outed as FBI assets. They are FBI informants.
Yeah.
Jesse Jackson admits he was the one that got Martin Luther King to the hotel. And that in court, him and the other guy admit they stepped to the side so they could get an open shot. And you're still a civil rights leader.
I mean, and to bring up to bring up more like NWA, Snoop Dogg has a murder case that he got away with.
Yeah, that's the one that.
And now he plays ball, perfectly ball.
Yeah, I got some thoughts on that, too.
Yeah.
I'll get into that a little later, because I kind of want to talk about this Laurel Canyon thing, but also kind of look at some of the more modern versions of it as well. I mean,
the most modern version that I can think of besides like Lady Gaga would be what happened with 90s grunge and like Nirvana and the Grateful Dead and Courtney Love. That is a more modern Laurel Canyon 2.0.
Well, we know, I mean, because, we're talking about, what's her name, Mackenzie Phillips, and what was done to her. The only saving grace that Courtney Love has, in my opinion, is that she was so traumatized as a child. Like, she was so traumatized. Like, what her dad allowed to be done to her is unforgivable. And this piece of shit is writing books, throwing her under the bus. I mean, you go fuck yourself, you scumbag. Like he put her in a mental facility. They openly admit they ran MK Ultra on her, and then they sexually abused her.
Mm-hmm.
And you think they sent her to Kurt?
Well, we'll get into that. I think that's so. What's your thoughts on Courtney Love?
Well, I think that she endured a lot of horrific trauma, but she was also given like specific jobs, passing out like LSD and da 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 da. I'm sure that in a way she's controlled, but she would be the equivalent of like 1960s what happened to Marilyn Monroe. But Marilyn Monroe was going a little bit too public, like with the Kennedys, which I think actually led to her demise. But Courtney has been really good about keeping certain things under wraps. And that's what you have to do to survive, or else you'll get suicided. But she was like the sex kitten, the MK Ultra, like Project Monarch type of figure, Courtney Love.
Well, it's like she was underage, sent to a mental facility. They ran experiments on her, sexually abused her, then used her as an underage prostitute on missions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, now where have we heard this before?
Dun, dun.
Where have we heard this? Barack Obama's mother. Barack Obama's mother was turned out by Barack Obama's grandfather. He turned his own daughter into a MK Ultra sex kitten, and he set her in. Like, Barack Obama's mom was an OnlyFans model before there was OnlyFans. She was taking pictures of herself, sending naked pictures to everybody. And you know how hard that was back in the day? You had to put in a letter and mail it.
No shit.
Well, think about it. You had to get the film developed by somebody.
Yeah,
you had to take
you
it
had
to
to
the
find out
drugstore.
one guy that could keep a secret.
Yeah, really.
He's like, one for you, one for me. Keep it cool. Don't tell anybody.
Do you think Ghislaine Maxwell was MK Ultra? Now that you got me thinking on that,
I mean, yeah, for sure. And she was the only attractive sister of that group. She was the front person. The other ones worked from behind the scenes as administrators. But back to Barack Obama's mom. Yeah, Barack Obama's grandpa sent his mother in on fucking missions to corrupt individuals that they wanted to get control of. She's slinging ass. His own daughter, right?
Oh, dude. Well, you saw the Hunter Biden shit. You think she's in there?
Who?
Oh, one of Obama's daughters.
Oh, you saw that pictures?
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it. But that's not, but that's something different. But this is what they do. They use their kids because they're all psychopaths. Right?
You'd have to be a psychopath to
hurt
use your own
kid.
children.
Yeah, it's like unbelievable to me that anybody would find that in any way acceptable. Your whole job is to protect your children.
It backs up this idea that maybe they're not human.
Damn.
I think it's actually interesting too, because you said they're all psychopaths, and like another thing that David McGowan talks about a lot is he wrote another book that was called Programmed to Kill. And he talks about how like all the most epic serial killers of all time were all in the military. So you wonder why they're so publicized, like Jeffrey Dahmer. They won't stop making Jeffrey Dahmer documentaries.
Yes.
And it's like, why? Because he was homegrown. All of them, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, they were all BTK. Military men.
You're totally right about that. It's like unbelievable to me. And then they release them it's like if you come to understand that everything's about just initiating trauma to raise anxiety, it all starts to make sense.